Now, after the user submits the data from your form by pressing the Submit button, you must collect and process this information that they're sending to make it useful. So let's now cover the options for processing your form data. As we've seen, the form tag has the following two minimum attributes, the form method and the form action. When the user clicks on the form Submit button, the content of the form is sent to a server. The action attribute defines a URL where the data on the form should be sent to be handled. The file defined in the action attribute usually does something with the received input. In this case, I'm mailing it to myself via this email address. In the second example, I'm sending it to the CGI bin of my server and then processing it with this order.cgi file. Although you can use just about any URL here in the action attribute, this destination should be a script or other construct capable of correctly interpreting and doing something useful with the data. Let me back up now and talk about the first attribute, the method attribute. This controls how the data is sent to the handler and is referred to as the transfer protocol. The two possible values of the method are get and post. Get is basically for just getting or retrieving data, whereas post may involve anything like storing or updating the data or ordering a product or sending an email. With the GET protocol, your form data is encoded by the browser into a standard URL and then passed along to the destination specified in the action attribute. For example, suppose you entered the value Las Vegas in this form field that I have in this code here. The value entered in the town field is tacked on to the end of the CGI's URL. Here is the way that this code would look in the browser. So if you put in Las Vegas and then submitted this form using the GET protocol, you would end up passing this information on to the end of the CGI's URL. Now, when this form data is added to the end of the URL, it is encoded so that the data can be used in a standard URL. Now, since the data is passed in the text of the URL, it's very easy to implement. You can pass data by simply adding appropriate text to the URL used to call the data handler. However, this method is also inherently insecure, so you'll never want to use the GET protocol to send confidential, unencrypted data to a handler, because the data is clearly visible in most user agents, such as browsers, and can be easily intercepted by hackers. The POST method passes data that's encoded into the HTTP data stream, and as such it's not typically visible to the user and is therefore much more secure. However, the POST method is a bit harder to implement. Thankfully, HTML forms and most other web technologies make passing the data via POST a very easy task. In fact, your web host can usually help you set up a CGI script called a form handler that can process your form information. CGI stands for Common Gateway Interface. You can also find numerous free form handler CGI scripts on the internet. Here's one website where you can find a variety of these scripts, www.cgi-resources.com. You may need to adapt these handler scripts that you download from sites like this or from your host. Form handler CGI scripts are often written in Perl, Python, PHP, or other server-side programming languages like Java, and generally run on the same web server that serves your pages. These scripts take the form data and do one or more of the following actions with it. They manipulate or verify the data in the form. They email the data to you or to another specified email address, or they store the data in a file or a database. Now, because form handling scripts can be so diverse, performing different functions and written in different languages, it's hard to give tangible examples here and also beyond the scope of this tutorial. But one of the more popular uses of CGI scripts is to send your form data to a database. Database programs are designed to store and manage large amounts of data. CGI scripts will translate requests from the web server into a format readable by a database. If you plan to use your form data in conjunction with a database, you'll need to learn more about how databases work with the web, as well as the programming languages in which these CGI scripts are usually written, such as Perl or Python or PHP. Or again, you can modify a CGI script provided by your web host or get one from one of the many websites that provide these CGI scripts. Just Google HTML form CGI scripts or form handling CGI scripts and you'll find a variety of these scripts available. As I mentioned previously, many web hosts offer their own CGI scripts for processing form data. If your web host does provide them, ask them where on the server that you need to store your CGI file. Some hosts require scripts in a central CGI bin directory in order for the scripts to work. Others let you store your CGI scripts in your own folders as long as the scripts have a particular file extension. If your web host doesn't allow CGI scripts, you can also consider using a form hosting service to process your form results. Here I Googled free script hosting and I got some resources for services. Here's a list of free services that host CGI scripts and the like on their web server. These will process your form contents. Now, if you don't want to use a CGI script at all, you can use a command directly in your form tag to send form data to an email address. I have an example here, actionmail2, then my email address, gonzalez500@hotmail.com, end quotation mark, greater than sign. Notice that this is an action here attached to my form. I showed you several examples of emailing your form data to yourself or to other email addresses. Check out this example in the form_image_button.html file. This action mail to returns a list of field names and values that are entered in each field. This option is useful only if the form is simple. More complex forms require scripts for databases to process and make sense of all the information being sent to you. Now, after the form data is processed, a script typically displays a message in the browser window noting whether or not the form data was sent successfully. It's always good practice when collecting data to provide your visitors with a confirmation or assurance of some sort that the action was taken based on their submission. You can also code your scripts so that they send a confirmation via email. That'll conclude this section of the tutorial on creating HTML forms. Let's now move on to the next section where I finally give you a formal introduction to CSS.